City Hall. And I want to, of course, thank all of the panel members here today, which will go in a minute to their introductions. But I first and foremost wanted to welcome our United States Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, back to San Francisco. Thank you for coming back here to learn more of our kindergarten to college program, and we love the engagement with you because we're always exchanging great ideas. And I want to just say he was here last month in May on a round table in our mission district where we were talking about the school's improvement grants, as well as our great investment in our promised neighborhoods, our mission promising neighborhoods grant. And it's wonderful because these are, again, great examples of how the collaboration between our various agencies, between federal and state agencies, with our school district, with our businesses, and our board of supervisors, colleagues, all of us are working together to signal that when we do that, great investments can happen and creative ideas can happen that further education for everybody, equalizes the field, but also ends cycles of poverty, which is one of the, I think, greatest goals the city has. I want to then thank Treasurer José Cisneros for your leadership on this. Superintendent Mr. Carranza, thank you. My education advisor, she's on the school board, and she's always reminding me about education. That's Hydra Mendoza. And our private partner that I've really come to know well as we have opened up this program and really suggested a true public partnership in every good sense of the way. That's Citibank. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So much. The hard work of all of us working together is already paying off. And in fact, just this past January, this particular program, Jose and I were back in Washington, D.C., received the National Excellence Award for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. It is being viewed as, of course, one of the most important steps any major urban city can take to help families, help education, help the connection, and make sure we continue to end cycles of poverty. So today I've got some good news to share. At the beginning of this year, after about two and a half years of rolling out the program, we finally got to a point where every single San Francisco Unified School District kindergarten student, every single one, has a college savings account. It begins with $50 deposited by the City County of San Francisco, but we have, and we'll go through some details in a minute, how we have created incentives to match dollar for dollar savings that will help families not only save early, but save often for college. And the data that's already coming out, let me tell you, they're pretty exciting. And although he's not here, I'm going to say thank you to Mayor Gavin Newsom as well. He'll be here probably in a minute. I think he wanted to join the assignment, but he helped kickstart this program. And I want to personally thank him as he takes on some creative movements in the state. But today I'm also proud to announce that in what I said earlier, in just a little over 2 years since these first accounts have opened, today, 1,000 families have the saving accounts, kindergarten to college. 1,000 families have saved an accumulated amount of $310,000 for their own money for college. That's fantastic. What we said earlier about this being our city family's attempt with the private partners that we have to end cycles of poverty, we really mean it. We don't just say it. Because the data is telling us now that 56% of the families that are enrolled in this program are also enrolled in the National School Lunch Program. So that's a very strong indication we're reaching the low-income families of the city. That's important to us. It's important to us because when you compare our program to what has been tried across the country, and the only other traditional college program that we know of is what has been labeled the 529 program, or the Coverdell accounts. In a recent study on a national basis, only 3% of American families are using that program to save for college savings. Compared to here, we have 4 times greater participation because of our kindergarten to college program. And in fact, in some of the San Francisco schools, the participation has a rate of over 30%. So that's a great, marvelous start. And in our surveys of the families that are enrolled here, most of the families are earning under $40,000. So I think these are strong data indications that our lowest income families are the target and they're saving early, and this will help us end the cycle of poverty. It also, by having these accounts, allows our ability to converse with low-income families in the city about financial planning for themselves, about planning for education, about making sure that there's a path forward to land all the great jobs that we're creating, whether it's tech, or bioscience, or diversity. Thank you, yeah. Thanks for being here. And so it's important for so many reasons. But I will say to you that the key to it is to have the city continue to say that every child in the city is important to all of us. What happens to them, we don't care where they came from. When they land in San Francisco, we do our best to take care of them. And we put forward education as the way forward for everybody else. And we want that to continue being the theme of this city. And hopefully, rather than just our city do it, we're not satisfied with just our cities, because poverty exists elsewhere. People come to our city to try to find solutions for themselves. And so we may be the first city in the country to launch this program, but we are not wanting to be the last city. We want to share this with everybody, and that's the reason why the Secretary's here, is so that he can learn and help us preach that if we got a good practice here and a good model, we'd love to share that with everybody. We hope the conversation that the panel will have today will spur us all to think about what we can do to launch similar programs, because in our country, we believe that this program will not only help the individuals that are enrolled, the families that are enrolled. We know it's going to help the families. But what we think it will do, and we will show the reasons why later, is that it will transform, in addition to those individuals, it will transform whole communities. And that's what we want to do. I am going to be taking off to the U.S. Conference of Mayors in a few minutes to deliver a speech on how the private sector is going to help me with creating summer jobs in this city and across the country. And I know, Secretary, you value that very much. With that, I'd like to say again thank you to Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, who I was there when this was announced 2.5 years ago at the elementary school, where you made this big announcement. We saw families, they were almost in tears because they really believed that we could accomplish this. Well, we're showing that we can. And so if you might say a few comments.
Gosh, don't do that. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mayor. And this is fabulous. I just found out you were all getting together. And I literally changed my schedule, came down. And so anyway, I'm just a huge proponent of what you're all doing and really proud of everybody. It's a remarkable journey in a world where we need to be talking about journeys a little bit more. I think the last big journey nationally we had was when we 62, when we announced we were going to the moon. And I just think we need a stronger narrative that can start uniting us into something that's not just aspirational, but a little more human and purposeful and meaningful. And I think that pursuit, as one journeys through life, kindergarten, creating a consciousness and expectation of lifelong learning is incredibly profound. And so that's really what we're celebrating here. I think as well, and I'll close, that it's important, maybe it's just because I spent an entire day with Tom Freeman yesterday at a conference, that we not just talk about learning in the context of college. K through 12 is great, but it's really now, and I know the Secretary understands this, it's about not just being college ready when you graduate, but innovation ready. In a world of hyperconnectivity, the merger of IT and globalization, where average is over, where we're not just competing against cheap labor, but we're now competing against cheap genius. We've got to raise the bar. We've got to raise our average to a whole nother global level. The global curve has raised. And so this becomes a basic principle of competition and a frame in closing that probably best can be described in this way, that once a mind is stretched, it can never go back to its original form. And if you could create an early consciousness of expectation upon entering kindergarten of a life that already has got a stretch goal in mind, that I think has a profound impact on Billy's ability of people to imagine themselves in a much greater place than they ever would have otherwise. So thank you for all your hard work.
All right. Exactly what we're doing. We are wanting to make sure every family in this city looks at college as an expectation, not an exception to what we're trying to do. And I know Secretary Duncan has been here before. He's heard it. He's heard that based upon the collaboration that has been going on for years with our various agencies and the community leadership that we have, we've got programs that are robust. Preschool for all, early literacy, bridge to success, college track, and then the newest is to focus on middle schools. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to get done. So with that, Secretary, if you can have a few words with us before we begin the panel, we welcome you back to San
I'll be
Francisco.
very, very brief. I really want to come here to listen and hear from you guys. But first of all, to the former mayor and the lieutenant governor and to the current mayor, this is a city that takes its kids and its community really, really seriously. And it's not a coincidence. I sort of keep coming back here. And I go to some places where it's inspiring and uplifting, like here. You go to other places where it frankly breaks your heart. And so I just want to thank the community here for taking on the real challenges and being so thoughtful and creative. Please give another hand for our treasurer for his leadership. I don't say this lightly. This is one of the more unique, creative, innovative, entrepreneurial ideas that I've seen. And to see so much buy-in, literal buy-in from families tells you what the interest is here. And families from the poorest of communities, they desperately want their kids to go to college. They just haven't had those kinds of opportunities. And starting to make it real for them in a tangible way, starting to have incentive programs. I'm really interested not just in the great work going on here, but the question you started with is how we start to take this to scale. So for all the 4,500 kids you're serving each year, that's fantastic, but there are hundreds of thousands of other 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds who need these kinds of opportunities. So your expertise on what's worked, what hasn't, how we try and make this a national model is really what I'm interested in. And just to sort of put in, so people understand the importance of this work, if you look across the country, and we know you have to have some form of higher education now to compete in a global economy, in the black community, it's about 1 in 5 people, about 20% has a college degree. In the Latino community, it's about 13%. So if we want to have strong communities and have communities of color be able to enter the middle class, we're nowhere near where we need to be. And so we have to pull out every stop to start to make this the norm rather than the exception. If you look at the income gap, look at people coming from the bottom quartile regardless of their race or ethnicity, people from the bottom quartile in our country right now have a 9% chance of graduating from college, less than 1 in 10. And then we wonder why we have intergenerational cycles of poverty and social failure. So this is the answer. If you start junior, senior year in high school, that's good, but it's very late in the game. Starting with our babies, working with their families is absolutely the right way to instill that mindset and that belief and that expectation that this is possible. And then I also heard you starting to do some creative things, not just on matching dollars, but some incentives if kids have good attendance or good grades and trying to change family behavior as well. I think your leverage here to make a difference is extraordinarily powerful. So I just want to thank you for an example that I'm convinced has national implications and want to learn from you how we try and help a lot more kids around this country. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. My name's Ann Stuhldreher. I'm with the California Endowment. We're a statewide philanthropic foundation. And I am so excited to be here moderating this panel. And I must say, I'm feeling proud to be a San Franciscan, really. Gosh, before kindergarten to college, across the country, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of reports, a lot of meetings, etc., about the need for a universal, automatic children's savings account. And it wasn't until the leadership of a lot of people at this table, a lot of you out there, you know who you are, a lot of our principals and teachers and parents and children that are over there along the wall, that we really made this happen, that we moved beyond the talk and we moved to action and to really making this a reality and taking that first step at putting college within reach of every child in our city. So I really can't think of a better group of people to have around the table to really dig into this today and talk about kindergarten to college, how it's working, where it's going, what we can learn from it, how we can move it beyond San Francisco. So I just want to introduce, I think, some people who haven't been introduced yet. I think all these gentlemen to my left have been introduced, and Hydra as well. I'd also like to introduce Benita Melton. She's with the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. Bob Friedman is with CFED. Robert Inible is with Citibank. We also have John Rogers. He's with Ariel Investments and also the former lead on the President's Advisory Council on Financial Capability. Luis Granados is with META, or the Mission Economic Development Association. And lastly, to my right, we have Supervisor David Campos from the Mission District and Bernal Heights. And I also want to give a shout out. We've got several principals here. It's great to have you. Teachers and parents and second grader, Mia, who's over there along the wall. Welcome, Mia. All right. So let's just jump right into this. Secretary Duncan, you're a busy guy. You could probably be doing a lot of other things today, but you decided to come out to San Francisco and really learn about K2C. What really caught your eye about this when you heard about this, and how might we start to think about moving this beyond San Francisco?
Well, I'll start and turn it to John at a certain point, but people may not know I got my start in public education when I was running John Rogers Foundation Chicago. We wanted to start an inner city small public school in 1998, about 15 years ago. And the neighborhood in which we were working had very poor public schools. We wanted to try and do something better. And then John had the brilliant idea of a money management firm helping to fund the public school. Why don't we put in place a financial literacy curriculum? Never would have occurred to me. And John will talk about it, but the lack of knowledge, the disconnect in communities of color and poor communities from banking, from saving, from long-term planning, that gap is staggering. And if we don't teach our kids how to manage money, how to think long-term, they will never break cycles of poverty, no matter how much money they're making, because they won't know how to save it. They won't know how to invest it wisely. So that was literally how I started my work in public education, was with a small public school that had a financial literacy curriculum. So this work has been extraordinarily important to me for long term. I didn't have José's vision. Didn't think about how to take it to, we talked about it, but how do you take it on a citywide basis? So seeing someone who understood the critical importance, who saw the tremendous need, but could take it to a much broader audience than our 400 kids at Ariel Community Academy, was just extraordinarily intriguing to me. And we started talking about 2 years ago, and it's taken me 2 years to come on this topic, but I'm thrilled to have the chance. And again, I just think the implications for kids around the country and for communities of color are pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So, Treasurer Cisneros, you've really led the implementation of this from day one. Why did you decide to take this on? There's probably a lot of other things you could do as treasurer. And is there anything about K2C that you really want to make sure that we all understand?
Well, I do think that it is an important topic to look at, what brought us to this point, what launched us in this effort. And I think and at the time, myself and former Mayor Newsom here, we were talking, and we were really inspired by some research that show that when a child grows up with a college savings account in the child's name, that child was 6 times more likely to go to college compared to a child without a similar account. It just was a mind-blowing realization that building aspirations in a child's mind like that could make such a tremendous difference to that individual's lifetime of success. And we wanted to bring that kind of success right here to San Francisco. Fortunately, our office had gained experience in launching a number of what we call financial empowerment programs, helping people be smarter about how they handle their money, primarily helping people understand how to avoid predatory financial services providers and avoiding how to get ripped off. So we thought we had the expertise and the capability, and fortunately, again, with a lot of help from a lot of people in this room, the right partners to really make something like this a success. We knew, though, that our own public school system here was largely full of kids from low-income families, and a lot of those families had real obstacles when it came to trying to start to save for college and opening up traditional college savings accounts. So we really wanted to take the best learning, the best knowledge we could, and launch a program that would help them be more successful at that. So we did exactly that. We got help from partners. We launched a program that really depends primarily on our strong partnership with the public school system. The school district gives us literally every piece of information we need to each year open up 4,500 bank accounts for kids. Not one parent signature required, not one piece of paper, nothing. It's absolutely automatic, and it happens for every single child. I think that's what's so exciting about the program we've put in place, is we've achieved those real goals of making this something that's absolutely automatic and something we should all just begin to take for granted. That we all have a chance to save for college, that we all have a savings account in our own name. And again, thanks to the city's being a sponsor of this program, we even have an account that already has its first deposit in it. And we have, through the benefits of strong private supporters of the program, an opportunity for families to even match their savings, double the early deposits they make, and be rewarded for saving every single month and turning it into a habit or even something that's automatic. It's those kinds of features of the program that I think has led to this great success of now seeing 1,000 families of having already started saving their own money, their own family money, for their kids' college education and their own kids' success. So I'm excited about what we've been able to do here.
All right. Lieutenant Governor.
As I said, I was heading somewhere else.
But you're here.
No, I appreciate it.
And I must say, I remember back in the day, a constructive impatience coming from you and your office.
Frustration.
Beating your hand on the desk saying, can't you guys hurry up and make this happen faster? And I just want to ask, are there any kind of lessons from that time that come to mind? that you wanna
Partnerships.
share?
We were able to just form connections. Citibank was a big damn deal. We didn't think much of Citibank back then. To be honest, I mean, we were all beating up all the banks, everything, and these guys came along despite all that and said we want to help, and did it in a way where, we were pretty cynical at first because we thought they're just doing this for a good little press conference and maybe get a little attention. But there seemed to be real sincerity in the subsequent conversations and follow through and commitment. And I think, look, the biggest risk with this whole thing was it was going to go away in a year or two. And they're nothing worse than a broken promise. Because then, these folks are let down yet again. And so the truth is, when I heard you guys do it, I'm just so excited this is going. And it goes to the leadership and stewardship of all of you in this room, and José and his team, and all extraordinary work you guys did. We stole the idea. And I love to say, well, we had it, but we didn't. We read about it. I remember those early articles when we had those meetings, José, remember you all coming up? I think it was in England or somewhere.
Yeah, the baby savings bonds.
Yeah, and then it was interesting, in the presidential, and you appreciate this, Mr. Secretary, it came up very early. Hillary Clinton brought up this idea.
Yes, she did.
In early parts of the primary. And it brought up, and then it just disappeared. And I remember seeing it on the policy. We actually cased her join on the website. We said, oh, here it is. It was actually part of the policy platform. And that was the ember that got us to say, let's see if we can make this thing happen. Let's get all that research overseas, et cetera. But it was just forming, a long-winded way of answering your questions, forming all the connections and the partnerships so that we can move from a situational idea to a sustainable practice and be there as we all want to be there on graduation day.
Right, exactly. And of course, one of the most important partners in making this happen has been the leadership from our school district. And so Superintendent Carranza and Hydra, I'd love to turn to you all now. We ask our schools to do so much and take on so much. And yet, you all didn't blink in terms of taking this on and really making it happen for every kindergartner in our city. And what do you really see as the value that kindergarten to college brings to students and parents in our city? And what are you guys hearing about this from principals and teachers?
Well, I think for us it's a no-brainer. We prepare students for a post-secondary experience. Yet very rarely do we equip students, especially students that don't have an entitled background. I mean, this is a non-starter for students that have educated parents, that are second, third generation college-going families. They know what they need to do right from the beginning, right from birth, to prepare their kids to go to college. And this is something that just happens. But what happens to those communities, those families like mine, that says you should go to college, you need to go to college, but don't prepare for college? So as a district, one of our strategic goals is equity and access for all students. This is actually making it real so that a student says and knows that when they enter on their first day into kindergarten, that they're starting to save for college. It's not a matter of if you're going to go, it's how you're going to go, where you're going to go, you decide where. But we as a community have said this is important. And what I will say is that for us it was a no-brainer. That's the vision meets the sky answer. The reality is that this is hard work. So how do you share information in a ubiquitous way so that everybody gets an account? And how do you work through issues of FERPA? And how do you work issues of intergovernmental agreements? And how does José know who to connect with? And who does and who what? It's hard work. And I think one of the things that we are so proud of is that despite all of the reasons and obstacles and reasons why this should have never ever gone beyond the visioning stage, and why we're talking about how every kindergartner now has an account, is because there's been a lot of tenacious people around the table that have said this is part of our vision for what we want for children. We cannot not do this. And I think that's what's so important. It's hard work, but it's the right work, and the right work is always hard.
So I just want to add to the partnership piece of it, because that I think has been really key. So coming into this administration under Mayor Newsom, the city and school district weren't nearly as close as they are now, and so much of our work crosses over. So I sit in this very unique position as a school board member with my colleagues, Jill Wins and Emily Maraste are both here. We have some policy things that we need to think about. So what this does for us is around absenteeism, because we can incentivize. We've had more families fill out their free and reduced lunch because they're going to get a $50 account open for them. We end up having to eat a lot, no pun intended, a lot of the free and reduced lunch applications that don't get filled out, because we will feed everybody, but it hits our bottom line budget. So there's some things like that on the policy end that are really important to us. And then, Maria Sue's here from our Department of Children, Youth and Families, who has been incredibly instrumental in making sure that the funding's available, that we're talking about this on a regular basis. Supervisor Campos is, they're approving the budget, they're making sure that this is a priority. So it wasn't until we all started to come to the table, Arne, when he was a superintendent in Chicago, used to call me and tease me because he had mayoral control. And he'd say, "Oh, I got that done." I'm like, "Oh yeah, the mayor and I can do it. I'll take care of that. What are you doing, Hydra?" And I would say, "Oh, do not get in touch with this guy because he will pressure you." And we didn't have that, but we didn't want that either. We were clear that we wanted a partnership with the school district, and that's what we've created. So I think the value. This is a perfect example of what partnerships are about and how we take care of all of our kids in San Francisco, and the idea that we've built it up to all of our kindergartners I think has been really key, and I think that's the skill, Secretary, that you're going to have to think about on how we can push that. But as the superintendent said, it was hard work, but it was easy because we have a relationship.
Thank you. Supervisor Campos and Luis, I'd love to turn to you now. And first of all, congratulations on the Mission Promise Neighborhoods award of $30 million. For the mission. We're all so excited about. So Supervisor, let me ask you first. Tell us about the families in your district, and when you think about K-C and kindergarten to college, you know, how do you see this kind of working for these families? And you know, many of them may be you know, the first in their families to attend college.
Well, you know, first of all, I want to welcome the Secretary and the Lieutenant Governor, and I'm glad that the two members of the Board of Education were acknowledged commissioners when in José. One thing that we need to understand is the time that this was happening, 2.5, 3 years ago, was a very tough economic time for the city and county of San Francisco. And I do give Governor Newsom, the mayor at the time, a lot of credit, because it was easy and there were many reasons not to fund this program. And it is because of how tenacious the treasurer was, and a number of us working from different sides of the political aisle said this is a priority. So thank you, Mayor Newsom, for making that happen. But for me, it was a no-brainer because of my own experience, and I think it really is related to the experiences of these immigrant families. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Guatemala, and I came here with my parents, undocumented, you know, when I was 14. I actually think that as an immigrant, I had a huge advantage. And the advantage that I had was that I grew up in Guatemala, in Latin America, not thinking that it was a big deal for a Latino to go to college, because every person who goes to college in Guatemala is Latino. Having moved to a place like South Central LA, where my peers, you know, were saying, you know, we don't go to college here, my response was, what do you mean? Of course you go to college. And that's because I grew up knowing and thinking that I could go to college. And so that's why, for me, this program has been and really is revolutionary, because there is something about that child entering kindergarten knowing that they're going to college. I really believe that the key to success has to come, is from within. If you believe that you're capable and you don't set limitations for yourself, then it doesn't matter what obstacle is out there. That is what we're giving these kids, and there is nothing more powerful than that. And that's what these families are getting, and they're proving, because so many of them are low-income families making very little money, that are saving at rates that are higher than, you know, families that are 20, 30 times wealthier. So that's why, for me, it was a no-brainer.
All right, thank you so much. Luis, some of the elementary schools in the Mission Promise neighborhoods have students in grades K through 3 who are saving in these accounts. How do you really see K-C fitting in with the Mission Promise neighborhoods and what you hope to accomplish there?
Yeah. So first, I want to go back to what everyone was doing and recognizing the leadership of José and Lee, and thank you for letting me be here. I think once again with K2C, you guys have done what you are known for doing, is coming with these common sense ideas, out of the box ideas, and implement them in a way that really make a difference for low-income individuals. So thank you. I also, Secretary Duncan, want to thank you for Promise Neighborhoods. I think it's a great program. And one of the great things about that program is the ability to incorporate an innovative strategy like K2C into other academic and community development strategies in a way that actually enhances all of them. For us, K2C is really a key component of the Mission Promise Neighborhoods. What we're trying to do, like a basic promise for us, is that for students to do better academically, their families have to do better financially. So in that area, we are working with families to improve their credit, to increase their savings, to reduce their debt. Every family in Promise Neighborhoods will be tracking along those indicators. I think K2C is a perfect example of how do you connect academic achievement with family economic success. It is incorporated into various components of our program, And one of the basic things that we will be doing, and we hope that the rate of success for the mission schools will be higher than elsewhere. So that's a challenge to us in Promise Neighborhoods, because we'll be having people who will be coaching these families through this, and we'll be tracking those numbers. The other thing that I think is really, really important about K2C when it comes to Promise Neighborhoods is that for us, that would be the entry point for families into family economic success. So whether they're thinking college, we're going to be talking about small business. We're going to be talking to them about savings accounts. We think that it won't end with K2C. K2C will be the beginning of other outcomes, not just for the student, but for the family. And again, I just want to thank the treasurer for taking the risk and being so adept at making this happen, and being just a great leader. So thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Anible, it must have been a lonely time for Citibank when this was getting off the ground, because I remember us doing an RF request for qualifications to see what financial institutions were interested, and none of them we got 0 responses. Yet you all decided to step up and take this on. And I just want to hear what did you see in it then? Why did you take that leap? And what can we do to encourage more financial institutions to really pursue similar endeavors?
Thank you. Well, again, congratulations to everybody in this partnership. And it was almost 3 years ago, as Gavin says, it was a difficult time, not just for the finances for the city, but for the financial markets. And your counterpart as Secretary of the Treasury would only confirm. And it was a big, question and a challenge. I was curious why no one else would. But I would start with one of the thoughts is I lived in London most of the time. And so I had been there when the program was introduced.
Okay.
And then within 2 years, when a new government came in with a coalition government, amongst the first things they did was they closed the program. They eliminated the program. And it really was an interesting moment to think why and what might differentiate this program. And I think one of the reasons was there was no private sector stakeholders in the UK program. It was supported by central government. It had the concept of the moment there. But there were no private sector stakeholders to step back and say, hey, we've all been investing in this program. And we need to always live through the idea of transition and changes in government and what that could mean. So for us, one, it was, we admired San Francisco. We know San Francisco. We saw it as a city. We've done other programs together with José's office on financial empowerment. But what we thought was, not only was it about college attainment, but it was also about financial inclusion. And it was really about building a platform for universal, inclusive financial inclusion, which we can't often do. Now, we didn't know if we could, because certainly there were plenty of people who said, how are you going to open thousands of accounts, 5-year-olds, with very limited documentation, no idea of their immigration status or not. I had to say, well, in loco parentis, the school district knows who they are, and the city of San Francisco knows who they are. And going through regulators with José and I at the FDIC and elsewhere, we had to be able to say, we think we can do this and still do it with legal, tax, regulatory challenges, for which there are many that would keep you from doing this. But to build a banking platform, that could mean we've opened over 8,000 accounts. And what we have found is, if a kid be able to go online to mysavingsAccount.org and see what they've saved and what's been matched. It was an amazing partnership with the school district and the Treasurer's office and the mayor. It also was an idea for us about how can we replicate and scale this. And we've used it for learning. We certainly work with KIPP schools now in 5 cities. We've set up a program like this, piggybacking on a lot of our learning here. But I think there's a real opportunity for the city and ourselves, I guess, to really share openly what we think can be done. And because it will take many municipalities, it will take charter schools, it will take parochial schools, it may take different groups in different cities as the scale of them and their capabilities are there. And it will take many banks to make this happen. But they, from the Treasury and regulators, will also need the comfort and the clarity that this is a goal not only about college attainment, which is an enormous thing, but it's also about financial inclusion. So today we have thousands of kids coming into branches all over San Francisco that are 5, and now like Mia, she's 6 or almost 7 probably, going into 2nd grade. And you know what? For some of them, for their parents, this may be the first time they too are going into a bank, or they may not have that banking relationship, and they want to know about how do I do this with my other siblings. And so it's really spurred an enormous interest in families and in the communities. So we're just very grateful to have been able to be a part and take the risk together and see the outcome.
Thank you so much. So, Anita and Bob, I want to turn to you two now. You both represent organizations that have gone the distance in supporting this type of work for decades. So, Benita, I'd love to hear from you. Why has Mott really never wavered in its commitment to this type of work and expanding economic opportunity for everyone, really, in our country? And I'm hoping you're going to move forward with this. And if we were sitting here 5 years from now talking about K2C and children's savings accounts, what would we be talking about? Where would you like to see this really move in the future?
All right, so the first part of that, the Lieutenant Governor took me on a little bit of a memory lane when he mentioned the UK and Hillary Clinton, because in 1999, Bob and I were part of a delegation that went to the UK to talk about this concept with the Blair government. And we were trying to get the spark here, and it turns out they moved ahead very quickly, and we were still waiting to see it happen here. And then we have the big bet here. So I have the deep privilege of working for the Mott Foundation. Philanthropy is a very unique perch in the social change world. And if I had to summarize what it's all about, it's really about investing in bright ideas that have the possibility to create brighter life prospects for people. And it's a treat to be able to do that. And what San Francisco has done here is a very huge bet to change life prospects for thousands of children. So when you ask why haven't we wavered, because again, Bob and I were talking before we got started here, the arc is long sometimes, and it takes a long time to see those early investments produce and turn into the big bet that they can become. I would also say that without getting into all the sausage making of this work, we've been at it for about 15, 16 years, and we know that assets matter. We know that they change lives. We know that they support aspirations. We know that they enable people to concretely grab and grasp their dreams and take advantage of the opportunities. And we'd like to see the idea develop and go further. You don't come to this work without being sort of idealistic and hopeful and optimistic, all of those things. So 5 years, I don't want to be greedy, but we have this very important, I think you referred to it as an ember. We have this ember, and the work that I would like to see happen is for that ember to catch fire around the country. That's what we'd really like to see happen. And when we think about how ideas diffuse around the country, first thing that when you're trying to promote a concept, first thing you get to ask is who else is doing this? And so we've got that now. We've got that sitting here in San Francisco. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for your vision. Jose and Lee, for all the work that you've done, Bob, everybody, the school district. Thank you for giving us something to point to and say, that's who's doing it. I think we also need the leadership. Your visit, Secretary, is great because it'll help build buzz and momentum in other communities. We need the supports for other communities that want to try it. I think Bob Anible was referencing all the work that went into this. We have a pathway here now with other banks that can feel comfortable in continuing to support and get that information out. half a dozen more communities maybe in 5 years. It doesn't happen
All right.
overnight, half a dozen. I'd also like to see a state take this on. I do think, at least in the near term, it's a muni strategy, but I would like to see a state take this on. Hint, hint, hint,
That's great. huh?
Do I need to say that one more time? I'd like to see a state take. So that's where I'd like to see us go. And in 5 years, I would like us to not only be talking about how many are around the country doing this, but about all the children whose life trajectory has changed as a result of doing this.
Amen. Thank you, Benita. Bob, gosh, so, so many of us think of you as one of the fathers of this work, or maybe I should say grandfather, with how often you flash
Fairy
photos
godfather,
of your
fairy
grandchildren.
godfather of the movement.
Yes. Bob, how do we, when Benita talked about going to more cities, about a state taking this on, about this happening nationally, you've been such a leader in kind of thinking and working to make this happen at the national level. How do we get there? And I know you've played such a big role too in finding, philanthropic, finding individual investors really to match the savings of parents as well. What needs to happen there as well?
We need more people like all of you. No, I have to say, it really feels like a dream coming true to me to be in this room today. I first read about child savings accounts in Michael Sheridan's epic book, Assets in the Poor, 24 years ago, in the draft chapter where he talked about them as hope in concrete form. And that was a dream from there. And as you well know, because Anne, you've been there from the beginning, leading this and orchestrating it. It takes the leadership of a city like San Francisco to really make it work. You always began by asking, what do we know? And asked us to collect everything that was known about the account. There had been a major seed demonstration in the country. There had been the UK effort and some other smaller efforts. You didn't let that hold you back. Then you innovated, and then you did something that I think we underestimate. It seems simple, but it's not simple to do it, and particularly to do it for the first time, and the city has implemented it really well. It is a partnership. The city has led, the school district has led. I also just have to add that when the school district said yes, they were facing $300 million in cuts. Any rational school district would have said. They didn't, and the bank, the private sector. But it's also going to take philanthropists, and I think there is a history again in this city of being a leader in philanthropy. The city is seeding the accounts, the city is paying for all the administration, the school district is bearing the cost of teaching financial education, but the matches to get people to save steady and often is going to come from the private sector and from individuals. And we have extraordinarily generous individuals in this city. The most generous person I know is sitting there. It's my mom. And she will be So we have lots of generous people. We announced it. We started the One-to-One Fund. Carl Rist is here, who's leading that, to encourage private donations in this city and nationally. We announced, Secretary Duncan, your visit, and already donations are pouring in online. So thank you again. I already I mean, people often say, oh, well, that's San Francisco. I'm hoping with this, they'll begin to say, that's San Francisco. And you provide us a model and an inspiration. Already, Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, will offer accounts to 15,000 entering kids this year. There are half a dozen to a dozen other cities and states looking at what's happening here. I think it's going to come bottom up. I just found out yesterday that Nigeria wants to replicate kindergarten to college.
Oh my God.
So my dream is broader. I think that kids in the city deserve this, but I think every kid in the country deserves this, and even every kid in the world, and that's where we're going.
Thank you, Bob. So, Mr. Rogers, you're such a great person to have at the table from all these different hats that you wear. As the chair of Aerial Investments, you were recently the chair of the President's Advisory Council on Financial Capability. Sounds like you guys were up to all sorts of things in Chicago, making this happen. And I think one of the key findings from the council was that financial education needs to start for all children at an early age. How do we get there? How do we get there in making that a reality for every child? And what can we learn from K2C and from a lot of the work you all have done to make that a reality?
Well, I think that one of the things when I got the opportunity to be the chair of the President's Council on Financial Capability, it became clear there were so many programs, so many people doing wonderful work around the country, for-profit, non-for-profit, stock market gains, literally 26 governmental agencies that had some impact on all of this. And you were really just such an extraordinary amount of things, but it was all very diffuse. It was everywhere. And so when I thought about the fact that we had the experience at the Aerial Community Academy of creating a robust financial literacy program, and like you all are doing here, giving real money for the kids to invest, and with Arne and his leadership role, it just became clear to me that the focus should be in education, and to have it build over time the same way that we learn math, or language, and all the other things, reading, all the key things that we need to have happen. And so the challenge in having Arne's leadership so important, how do we get this into the core curriculums of public schools throughout the United States? Because again, so many of the other well-meaning programs are short-term, hit or miss, and it really doesn't change behavior. And as we all know, we learned from the financial crisis, this is such an extraordinarily difficult decision you have to make. Not only about whether it's paying loans or mortgages or what have you, but now, as we know, pension plans are going away and defined contribution plans are being the answer. And so therefore you have to be your own financial money manager to prepare yourself to retire someday.
Yes.
So it's so complicated. This issue is more important than ever, and I think we can't let it just be haphazard. We have to focus the responsibility in a key place. That's why I love what's happening here, because it also is focused on public education, which I think is really the answer.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We have a few parents here who are saving in accounts and children. So we have Doug Vasquez and his daughter Mia Vasquez. Hello. Trisha Holloway. And Michael Lan is both you're both a parent and a principal. Is that right?
Parent.
Parent.
Sitting almost.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, you just got promoted. So I'd love to hear from some of the parents, and what did you think about K2C when you first heard about it?
I think the gentleman has spoken, have said it a few times. It definitely was a no-brainer. It definitely was a no-brainer for the simple fact that it is a stepping stone to get them to higher education. Period. There's no. I was brought up. My mother had a master's in accounting from El Salvador. We came to the U.S. It was a struggle the whole way through as she transitioned from one country to another country, and her whole thought and her whole process was, There's nothing more important than your education. Anything else you can do in this life, your education is the one thing no one can ever take away from you. So that is the one key.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Tricia, I'd love to hear from you. Do you have any advice for the people who run this program? How can it be made even better?
I think I'm a parent of an incoming second grader. I live in Bayview District. And I think for my community is getting the word out. Like when I heard about the program, when I went to register my daughter for kindergarten and the secretary handed me the form, I thought, are you serious? And I said, what's the catch? And she said, well, we just need you to fill this out. And I thought, okay, well, I need to research it before I fill anything out, because when someone says, just sign here and we'll give you the money, I'm going to look into it. So I Googled, you know, K to C, and I said, okay, this is a legit program. This is not a scam. And I said, for myself, honestly, I said to my husband, we want my daughter to go to college, but we didn't have the means. And I said, by all means, of course we're going to do this, and we're going to make it work. And so what we found out was he could deposit money from his paycheck. I said, do it. If you don't see it, we won't miss it. But this is the way we can build. And when he got an increase, a cost of living, I said, okay, so it goes to her college, because we were able to live on that. It goes to her college, and that's the way we do it in our family, and it's working for us.
Thank you. So, Michael, tell us about your experience with kindergarten to college, and how have you made it work for you?
Well, I think the message has been echoed a number of times. It really is a no-brainer. I think because it's so easy, and because of the incentives, it's that aspect of it. It has to be easy, and you have to basically do nothing for free money. I mean, you know, just because you're getting so many forms from school, and you don't even know which ones are important. So I think that made it very easy to enter. I think my experience, just in terms of how it's changed the dialogue in our house, I think is even more important. And there's, you know, two aspects I think there. One is just between my wife and I. You know, we've always intended for our girls to go to college, but it was kind of a back burner kind of thing. And now it's, okay, front and center. We got an account, we're talking about it. So for us as parents, it was powerful in that way. But I think for our daughter, you know, it's not that we're sharing the website with her. They're both very little, but just because we're talking about it, and then she's hearing it, you know, it's just becoming part of our culture. It's become front and center versus, okay, we'll worry about it later. And just one more comment I want to make. I think the other powerful thing, I think, is that it's not just, you know, my kid has this account. Every kid has that account. And I think there's something, there's an underlying message there, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but the way I'm thinking about it is, it sends a message to this generation of children that we need to do this together. And I think that's big, right? And for me, I find that it's very touching. It's what we need to do. We have no choice, actually. And so I think for our children to be in that environment and have that underlying message is probably the most powerful of all.
Well said. Thank you. Principals here who are so nice to come take some time from their summer break and be with us. And first, I'd love to ask Principal Dennis Chu with Gordon Lau Elementary. You know, your school is one of the top saving schools in this program, and you also have a very high percentage of students participating in the free and reduced price student lunch program. How have you made this work at your school, and why do you think this is really resonating with parents and students?
Okay, let me kind of paint that picture. So we have 647 students, and 150 of those students have been in the country less than 2 years. Another 250 have been in the country between 5 years. So we have a high population of Asian students, Latino students, and large immigrant population. Why do we have such a population? Is because people who come from Asia or Latin America, they come here for their children. They're not coming here for themselves. They want their children to attend college. When you talk about the K-2 college program, what you see is that, like the parents said, suddenly free money. Okay, well, a lot of immigrant parents are going to be really suspicious. Is that we're going to get deported, are we legal or illegal? We also have to address some of that, we also invited outside people to come in to do the financial literacy. We did it in English and in Spanish and in Chinese. So because we do have a lot of parents who are still afraid to use the banks in the United States. That's why a lot of these parents and grandparents are victims of these scams. And they're keeping money and jewelry in the house, and boom, that's how they get access. But this funding from K to college, okay, when the parents heard about it and had 1,001 questions, okay. But we are very fortunate because every year, Mr. Cisneros himself comes to our school, meets the parents, talks to the parents. Now that itself is, the top man is coming to talk to you about the money. So I think that is one of the key factors. I also feel that, we also have the parents who are asking questions. Okay, is it true that they're going to really match the funds? So we put in $500. They put in $500. I said no. $100 is the limit. But why is it only $100? I don't know why.
Good question.
We have thinking, right? So that's why I think this really is the point, because all these parents, all of our parents want their children to go to college. And then when our Lieutenant Governor was talking about, a journey, well, there's that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I think K2C has to help our parents take that gigantic step. Okay, thank you.
So we also have Andrew Poon with us. He is both the principal of Sutro Elementary and a K2C parent and saver. So yeah, I'd love for you to give us the view, really, from Sutro Elementary and how you all are making this work there.
So we're Sutro Elementary and half the size of my colleague here. And I am a parent. I'm first grade father of a first grade daughter. And kindergarten wasn't the reason that she came to my school, but it's the reason why she's staying. My mom likes that as well. But we're kindergarten college. And the big thing with this thing is that we ask our teachers. My teachers and my parents and my staff are really hard workers. I actually have to give a shout out to one of my parents. Teacher Shaw is also a parent. She works in the treasurer's office as well. And every time we have open house back to school night, we have these flyers, Chinese, Spanish, even in Russian, explaining about the program. Every time we have a picnic, these flyers are out there. So there's no reason. And the secretary says, if you have a question, ask the principal. He's a kid college, card holder. He has an account number, and you can talk to him about that as well. So basically, we have this going on. Some parents are still worried a little bit because of the free money, but we're trying to educate that as well. Some of the things I want to just add really quickly that we have a parent that also connects with the colleges. We didn't talk too much about colleges, but the biggest thing that my daughter remembers was that they actually had a chance to walk through the campuses, sit into a lecture hall, and come back and say, hey, Dad, your gym is so much bigger than our gym. I don't even have a gym. So that thing, I see, the Lieutenant Governor is also a trustee of the UC system, so we need to have a college person on the round table, just to invite them. But we have a large college campus, USF, San Francisco State, junior colleges. Just have someone lead a field trip. They come back, the COVID, so they see these kids. They're so excited. You're going to go to college and come to my college, and it's just in their mind because she still talks about it 2 years later. The other thing else, I thank the bank so much for all the work that you've done. but it's still a little daunting for a little 5-year-old to drop off money. And so I think if there was some way to have some kid at college Saturday with milk and cookies or something like that, I'll pay for the milk and cookies. But maybe selected neighborhood schools could have that. And they'll come up, because I remember when you were little, you had a little passbook. And then remember before .coms and everything, and you guys would count the interest and so forth, and so forth. And so those are some ideas that my parents and my teachers, and the teachers are really hard workers, and they've taken on financial literacy staff development. So now these kindergartners are now, we're part of the pilot school, so we're now third graders now. So about 9 years from now, these class of 2022 will be graduates as well. So thank you. And I also like to thank our first kindergarten promotions, Treasurer Cisneros, as well as Supervisor Eric Marr, came to speak. This was a big deal for these parents and everybody to show up at my kindergarten graduation to speak about kindergarten.
So lastly, we also have a teacher, Jane Chai. She's here from Bessie Carmichael Elementary, and she's a kindergarten teacher. So Jane, you're really the front lines of kindergarten to college. You're talking to students about this, parents. What do you hear from them, and what do you say? Really just give us the view from your school, please.
So I work at Bessie Carmichael Elementary School, which is the only public school located in South Market District. And my families that I work with are very fortunate to have this program at our school, because these are families who come from low-income areas, and they are living in transitional homes and double up, triple up families, and they don't see college as an opportunity for them. And when this program came to our school, they were very skeptical. They had tons of questions, and I had tons of questions as well. So that's when our principal and the teachers went to professional developments and started finding out, asking questions and getting real answers. And people from the, like Christina, from the treasurer's office came and spoke to our parents. There's many people who's come to like graduations and spoke to them. And parents are very gung-ho about it, because I mean it's really good, too good to be true. And when we do have questions, it's answered in a professional way. They are very excited, because I mean, how many of us like really want to go to college but never thought that we can because of financial means? I mean, this is just a seed in the account, and it's just going to grow. And I think for parents to see that, oh, you know, these are families who don't have bank accounts, when they see that, oh, my child has a bank account, and whenever they get birthday monies, they're like, oh, we're going to put it in the college fund. And I have students who come to me and say, oh, Ms. Chai, you know, I went to the bank today, and I'm going to put more money in, and I'm saving for college. And that's very exciting for me as a teacher, and also for them, because they're looking into 15 years down the road, you know. And for them to say that, and for me to inspire that could happen for them, is very, it is the reason I became a teacher. So it's very inspiring to see that the community is involved, and it's a great opportunity for me to actually be in this room and see how many people are actually involved, and that we might take this to the national level. It's very exciting, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. So I think we have a few minutes if there are any questions from the media. Is there anybody back there who has a question?
How about from parents?
Yes, okay. So we're good. Gosh, you guys were just all so insightful. There's no questions. That's fantastic. So it sounds like you have a question, and then I think we need to turn it back to you all just to wrap it up.
So my name is Todd Dana, and I have 3 children in the San Francisco Unified. My youngest will be starting kindergarten this fall, so thank you for the $50. I appreciate it. I have to say that I'm struck by the juxtaposition of this roundtable, everyone recognizing the importance of investment into the future of our children's education, and the state of investment in public education in the state of California. And that, you know, in the state of California, if I remember my statistics correctly, 1 of 6 public school students are in the state of California. One in 8. Jill's telling me it's 1 in 8, so I'm gonna say 1 in 8. And but it's such a large number of our public school students are in the state of California, and yet we're the bluest of blue states, and we are 49th in investing in our public schools in the country. And so I'm wondering, I mean, I'm really kind of looking towards Secretary Duncan and Lieutenant Governor Newsom, like, what can we do from a top-down and bottom-up point of view to put the pressure on Sacramento to invest in our public system, in our public schools? I mean, we talk about that the number of poor students, poor families that go to the public schools in California. I mean, we do not want to become a 2-tier system where the wealthy go to the private schools and the poor only go to the public schools, right? And so, you know, I'm wondering, it seems to me that the Obama administration has the bully pulpit to kind of say something to our governor in Sacramento. And it seems like that we as individuals have stuff to say to our legislators.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
So I'm wondering. Yeah. No, but I'm wondering what the.
I'll start and kick it to you. So my understanding of your living this is that the governor's trying to make a huge commitment to reverse some of the historic cuts and is doing it in a really thoughtful and creative way and trying to get more resources to kids and communities who have been historically underserved. Let me just really clear, this is not a California issue or a Sacramento issue, this is a national issue. And take the politics and ideology out of it. We have a set of politicians who look at education as an expense, something that should be cut in tough economic times. And you have a set of folks who think of this as the best investment we can make. And frankly, we just need a lot more politicians, Republican, Democrat, Independent, I could care less, who see this as the best investment we can make. But there is a real split in our country right now. Absolutely. That debate is happening everywhere we go.
No, I mean, I'll just connect with what the Secretary said, but my bias is bottom-up thinking, not top-down. I think with the exception of this Secretary, and I say this everywhere, I mean, he's done more to elevate the consciousness of the importance of the federal government in top-down leadership than probably any previous Secretary in my lifetime. And so I give him extraordinary amount of credit, but at the end of the day, it's bottom-up thinking and bottom-up strategies that ultimately will manifest to sustainable solutions. And you know, I think this is just another example that all saw that there's not a problem that exists in education that hasn't been solved by somebody somewhere.
Right.
And so it's all about taking these best practices, scaling them to the unique needs within our diverse communities across the country, and continuing to provide the flexibility and the experimentation that cities as laboratories of innovation and states as laboratories of democracy can provide. And I want to just subscribe to the point of view of the Secretary that I don't think you've been misled about, I think, some of the strategic investments that Governor Brown has been making, and I think with some real thoughtfulness. And I think he deserves an enormous amount of credit for steering the ship. We've done a decent job at solvency, but now we have to start focusing again on greatness. And that's the next phase, the next iteration.
Thank you. Well said.
Chancellor Cisneros, do you want to wrap this up for us?
Sure. I would be happy to. And again, on behalf of Mayor Lee, myself, Lieutenant Governor, thank you for stopping by. It's always great to see you back in this building. We used to enjoy you in every day. And on behalf of our elected supervisor and so many of our other partners and friends and the school district, I think everyone's had a chance to see how much of a huge and the success of this program has relied on so many diverse supporters, partners, and real visionaries who've helped us every step of the way in making this program a reality. We're in our third year now, and it's really real. The accounts are opening, people are saving at a higher rate than the whole country saves in 529s and tax-deferred college savings and programs. And that's a great achievement in a short amount of time, but we're not going to stop here. We have a long way to go. We have 12% of our families saving. We're going to see that number grow if it's the last thing we do. And so I want to ask everybody in this room now, in addition to thanking you for all you've done, ask your help in helping us grow that participation rate. Let's get that up to the 50% level. Let's get that well beyond the 50% level. Let's shoot for making sure that every single one of our families is saving for their kids' college education, for their kids' future lifetime of success. I want to thank you, Ann, for helping us with this discussion this afternoon. I want to recognize my colleague, Lee Phillips, who runs our Office of National Empowerment. But certainly and most sincerely, Secretary Duncan, we're honored by your presence here today. We're excited about your taking the time to learn more about our program. We're enthusiastic. You know, we've seen how the federal government's taken exciting models like Promise Neighborhoods and so many others and helped them grow and spread across the country. We'd love to see if we could work with you to make this one of those types of programs. And I don't know if you have any closing remarks you want to share with the audience, but we do have a lovely reception outside, so we're going to ask people to stay and enjoy and continue to talk with us after the Secretary has to leave.
No, just thanks so much. It's pretty extraordinary to see, and it's one thing to sort of hear about and read about. It's another thing to sit in a room and hear from all the different stakeholders what's going on. So thanks for the huge difference you're going to make in your children's lives, and thanks for the example you set for the country. So we got some work to do.
All right, we'll be in touch.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.